chances, and Lima, who before today had scored 20 against 25 different teams in Portugal, has his first ever goal against Penafiel. Benfica lead by a goal to nil. Benfica could be in here. Salvio is clear. He's got Jonas to his left. Salvio may go himself. It's cut back here for Jonas. 2-0. As simple as that. He draws level with Jackson Martinez. Great work from Salvio. That's his 10th assist of the season. Jonas had Lima there too, but as soon as he received the ball, there was only one thought in his mind, and he thumps the ball into the back of the net for his 18th of the season. Benfica 2, Penafiel 0. Lima. 2 to aim for in the box, cut back to the edge. This is Pizzi. That will do for Benfica. Pizzi makes it 3. Only his second goal of the season. He also scored in a 6-0 win over Estoril. I wonder whether we might see 5 or 6 today for Benfica. He picked his spot. Oh, and there's a chance here for Lima to make it 4. Surely round the goalkeeper. Lima has his 17th of the season. Benfica's 4th. Calamity for Penafiel. And just moments after making it 3-0, Benfica make it 4. Lima's second. Very coolly done, you have to say, but calamitous defending from the side to the bottom of the league. What can you say about that? Well, they came into the game with the worst defence in the league, 62 conceded, that's now 66 conceded. What on earth was going on here, Chubb?
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Talking to the Dog Benfica podcast. My name is Alfredo, and you've just been listening to Patrick Kendrick, which we have the privilege of having on our show tonight. With me also, Mr. Cristiano Oliveira. Hola! And Chalkboard couldn't be here today, so we're one man short. But Patrick's here, and I hope Patrick can make up for it. Patrick, what's going on, my friend?
I'm very well, guys. How you guys doing?
Good, very good, very good. Especially when we're 3 points from the title.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Not even 3. 1 point. 1 point's enough.
No, 1 point's not enough.
How's that not enough?
You still got to win.
It's 3, Chris.
Well,
it's
that's
3.
right. That's right.
Still got to.
As you could tell, that math wasn't my forte in school. Because the whole 4-point stuff had me all messed up.
Anyway, my name is Alfredo. I always forget to introduce myself.
Nice to meet you.
And on tonight's agenda, we'll look back at the game against Penafiel. We'll also look ahead to what could be the title game in Guimaraes this coming weekend when Benfica travels up north to the birth city to face the local team Guimaraes. Let's start real quick with the Penafiel game. Obviously, I'll give you the lineup real quick. Júlio César, Maxi, Luizão, Jardel, and Eliseu are across the back. Samaris and Pizzi were in the middle. Salvio and Sulejmani on the wings. And Jonas and Lima up front. Obviously, with Gaetan being hurt, we saw Sulejmani once again. And Chris, I don't think he was as effective this game as he was in the last game, or at least as impressive after a long-term absence.
Who's this?
Sulejmani.
Oh, listen, he wasn't as impressive as he was last week, but I still thought he played well enough. And this is a guy that was out for a long time, so you expect this guy to go through his ups and downs. If he had been healthy the whole time, okay, you should expect a little bit more than him. But right now, I think I'm pretty happy with anything that this guy puts out. And I got to be honest, I'll take him right now, even though he's missed the majority of the season, over Sulejmani. I mean, I like Sulejmani in some aspects, but right now I still go with him. So, I mean, I wasn't that upset with him.
Yeah. And, Patrick, you've had a chance not to see Sulejmani twice, once, live. What do you make of Sulejmani?
Yeah, I think he's still finding his feet because he had quite a sort of interrupted season, certainly this year. I know he was out for 5 months after the Europa League game. So you could see that he was still feeling his way back in. But it was an astonishing statistic I read in the build-up to the game. That was the first time he'd ever started 2 consecutive league games in his Benfica career. You know, so last season he struggled to get in because Nico and Salvio were playing so well, so he was never going to get in ahead of them, and he's had to really wait for his chance. But I think he's going to take a bit of game time to get back to full fitness. You could see that he was a bit rusty. His touch was there. You know, the technical ability is there. He was just lacking a yard of pace, which meant that whereas maybe Salvio or Gaetan, had they been playing, would have got in on a couple of occasions, you just saw the ball run over the byline and he wasn't able to collect it. But I think he looked bright. His movement was good. You could see that he understands, he reads the game well. He was linking up well with his teammates. It's just it was all happening up there. He just couldn't quite get it to happen down at his feet. I think just because he's rusty and he's coming back, but there's potential there. I think absolutely.
This is a player that's the most expensive player ever in the history of the Dutch league. People forget that when Ajax bought him. This is a guy that went for 16.7 million pounds or dollars or euros at the time, whatever it was. I mean, I just know he's the highest, most expensive player ever in that league. So obviously there's talent there, and this is the reason why Benfica went and got him. But you know, he's up and down, but right now I'm not disappointed in him. Not that disappointed with him, I should say. So not a brilliant performance. Obviously, you get more from Gaetan, but that being said, I still thought it was enough.
Yeah, he's had a lot of issues with injuries that we've seen time and time and again. And now I think this past week there was some news that he might end up going back to Holland to play, so we'll see what happens with him.
I mean, if he's not going to feature, if I'm his agent or I'm him, and I straight go up to George Jesus next, you know, in the offseason. So if I'm not going to be a regular, again, the key word here is if he's healthy, okay? If I'm healthy and I'm not going to feature in the starting 11 or be at least in a rotation, then yeah, obviously I'm going to explore him. I'm going to look at every option I have, and I'll be out. But if JJ tells him that he's going to get some playing time, he's going to be part of his plans, I don't see him leaving.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the best thing for him would to be is it's great that JJ is able to introduce him now with a couple of games left of the season. As and when Benfica go and secure the title, if he can be on the pitch for that, it makes him feel more a part of it. And then I think that's going to give him more confidence going into next season. I think it would be a mistake to leave, okay, he's been there 2 years, but in actual fact, he's only really played for half a season because he was kept out of the team a lot last season. He's barely seen any playing time this season. I think the best option would be to him to have a full pre-season with the team. And if he finds that come January he's still not playing because maybe Gaetan has stayed, which we're not sure whether he will. But if Gaetan goes, he might get an opportunity there because on the opposite flank to Salvio, if he finds he's still not playing come January, I think it's perfectly legitimate to say, okay, I've given it 2.5 years, but now for the best of my career, I need to be playing. Yeah. I think that would work best for the club and for the player. But I think he owes it to the club as well to give them at least another 6 months, you know, because he has been out. They've not seen much return on their investment. Yeah. And so, you know, I think it's important to show what he can do.
Yeah, and picking up on what Cristiano was saying, he was the most expensive player of the Dutch league at that time.
No, ever. Still, till this day, the most expensive ever.
Right, and he came to Benfica on a free after his contract ended.
Yeah, that was.
But here's the thing: looking at that and taking that into consideration, maybe Ajax knew something about his physical condition and knows that perhaps he's not a guy that can handle the whole season and is a guy that's injury prone, much like Ian Robin. And maybe they decided to let him go. And here's the thing. Benfica signed him on a free, and I'm sure they're paying him a hefty salary.
Exactly. See, here's the thing. Here's the thing, though, guys. I'd be lying to you if I were to tell you I know enough about this guy or I know enough about his career. I obviously don't. I don't know if both of you guys do, but I obviously don't. So that being said, I don't know if the case was that maybe he just, you know what, he decided not to renew his contract and say, you know what, I want to go on, to green pastures and do what I have to do and explore other leagues. I don't know enough about that. Maybe you're right. Maybe it had to do with an injury concern, but I'm not even sure about that. It could have very well been that he decided to just move on.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we'll just have to see Benfica at this point too. I mean, the fact that they're playing him a hefty salary, we got to see if he could put some kind of a good run together to give his to give his contribution to the team. And I think last year, up until the time where he got hurt in the Europa League, he was actually doing pretty well, and he was putting in good performances for Benfica, albeit maybe off the bench. But he was a utility guy that JJ could trust. And after he got hurt, there it goes, and it was a long time.
I think Patrick hit it on the head. If Gaetan leaves, there's a great chance he stays. If Gaetan stays, I don't think any Benfiquista will be too upset about that, and therefore he might look at other options because he knows that he's not going to play on either wing. If Salvio and Gaetan are both healthy, it's going to be hard for him to get on the field. That's why I think it's crucial that he has that conversation, or his reps have that conversation with Benfica and JJ or whomever the coach is next season to determine whether this guy's going to be part of the coach's plans. And if not, I mean, I can't blame him for wanting to leave. Patrick, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as I said, it works both ways. The investment I'm speaking about is exactly as Alfredo said, that, although he signed on a free, often to make up for that, the club aren't paying a transfer fee, so they can afford to pay out more in wages. So consequently, I don't know the ins and outs of his contract, but he could be on quite a significant money. And suddenly, if you've got a guy who's on the wage bill, taking a lot of money, even when they're injured, you still have to pay them. And so then it does become difficult because the player gets frustrated because they want to justify their salary, but they're not, they're on the treatment table. The club are getting frustrated because they're paying a lot and they're not seeing it. So I think there is a temptation at times just to go the separate ways. But I think we've seen enough from Sulejmani that, there is a reason, as you said, why he's that Dutch league's record transfer. He's clearly got ability and he's at a good age as well. He needs to have a run in the side. If he's not going to get the run in the side, if he's fit come pre-season and Jorge Jesus says to him at the start of the season, look, I can't see a way of you getting into the team unless so-and-so is injured, or, then maybe he has that frank conversation and he decides to leave. Or maybe he's willing to say, you know what, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'll start the season on the bench, but as soon as I get my chance, I'm going to keep my place in the team and I'm not going anywhere. Or so it's a part of it's down to the club, and part of it is down to the player himself and his management team.
Yeah. Well, Benfica definitely saw something in this guy because he came in alongside Jurisic, a guy that Benfica actually paid money to get from Heerenveen, whatever. I can't say those Dutch names.
Markovic.
Okay. Well, but those two players, they came in together from Holland, I'm saying.
Yeah.
And Benfica paid a hefty price for the other dude, and they had absolutely no problem in telling him, look, you're not part of the plans. Go elsewhere. He went to Hanover, didn't work out. And 6 months later, now he's at Southampton. Hasn't quite worked out for him. I don't know what Benfica's plans are, but the fact that they at least told Sulejmani, look, or didn't tell Sulejmani, but okay, fine, but he could have found his way out. That's what I'm trying to say. They had no problem telling the other guy that he's not ready, and they kept this guy around. And now that he's healthy, you see him getting into the starting 11. Obviously, due to the fact that other guys are injured, but at least Benfica are using him. Where the other guy that came through with much more fanfare than he did, Benfica had no problem telling him, listen, pack your bags, get your game ready, and hopefully we could use you in a couple of seasons.
Yeah. All right. Let's just turn our attention to the game now. I think we got to off on a little bit of a tangent with Sulejmani. But Patrick, you've actually, I heard you being the play-by-play guy on this game, and Benfica scored early. What were your thoughts on the game?
I think that's been so important, again, as you said, the fact that Benfica scored early. We've seen that in a lot of their recent games. And I think when you are going for the title, and they've been playing first, and I think this is something we'll touch upon later on, but they know that they have the lead in the title race and that they're playing before Porto. So just to settle the nerves, particularly at home, where the crowd can get restless, Benfica almost had nothing to gain here, besides the 3 points, obviously. They're top of the table and going for the title. Penafiel need to win the game to avoid relegation. They're never going to win at the Estadio da Luz. They've never won there in their history. So until Benfica get that goal, you just sense that the longer it goes on, the crowd might start to get a bit restless. But the real credit that we have to give to Benfica is the fact that they never allowed that situation to come to pass. And that was the same against Académica. It was the same against Braga. And in some of the away games as well. So the fact they're able to score in the first 10 minutes almost puts the result to bed. They've conceded 4 goals in the league all season at home. Penafiel aren't going to go to the Estadio da Luz. All right, they might go up the other end and get a shot goal, but then you just know it's only a matter of time before Benfica get another one. So I think the really crucial factor is get that first goal early. You've got the lead, and then you can just start to relax and play your football. And we saw that, and there was some really nice football. I thought Lima was absolutely fantastic. Jonas is the most consistent player in Benfica's side, if not the league. I mean, his performance levels just don't waver whatsoever, and he seems to relish stepping up when Gaetan's not there as well. So I think it's just that early goal is so crucial, and I think if they can do that against Guimaraes as well, then that will be one step towards the title.
Patrick, you mentioned Penafiel is not going to go inside the losing score. I mean, this is a team that hasn't scored in what seems like months. They haven't scored in what, 6 hours, whatever it is now?
It was 4 games before that game, so 5 now, and it was really unlikely that. But you know what? Again.
I tip my cap to them though on the other side though, Patrick, because I thought that they came in and they tried to play football. They didn't exactly pack everybody in and defend it and just clear the ball. They tried. At least they obviously needed to get some points here, or else obviously the loss meant that they were going to get relegated. That being said, they needed to get something out of this game. But you know, I give them credit. They didn't pack the box like we've seen many teams go into Stade de Luz and don't even attempt to play football.
Oddly enough, I thought they had the better of the first 7 minutes. The goal came in the 8th minute, and I thought the first 7 minutes they were actually the better side. They showed more attacking intent. They had more territorial dominance than Benfica. They spent a lot of time in Benfica's half, and they just got caught out. No one trapped the Lima run, and I mean the cross was an absolute beauty from Maxi. Yeah. But once that goal went in, you saw their heads started to drop. I think they knew that they'd left themselves too much to ask. You know, they were feasibly needed 9 points in the last 3 away games to Benfica and Porto. I mean, you can't go into a situation like that at the end of the season. So in some ways, it was the perfect game for Benfica to have. But as I said, on the other side of the coin, they almost had nothing to gain from it because it was so heavily in their favour, and they were expected to win and win easily, which is what they did. But that's not necessarily easy, and I think the early goal really allowed that to happen.
Yeah, and Patrick, you talk about the crowd and the crowd's involvement, and this, I believe, this game, Penafiel game, is probably the second consecutive sellout at Stade de Luz that you've been a witness to. Talk to us about the atmosphere at the Luz, especially that game with Porto, and now the game against Penafiel, where the fans really got a pulse on the Bicampeonato, that Benfica can clinch the Bicampeonato. Talk to us about what it's like to be in a stadium and to witness that atmosphere from an outsider's perspective.
Well, first of all, what I find interesting is they don't open the ground to supporters until 2 hours before kickoff. So I was in there. It was a 5 o'clock kickoff on Saturday. I was in there at 3 o'clock, and it's quite an impressive sight. You see everything being set up, and on the way into the ground, there are thousands of people already around. You know, coming from an English culture, we don't tend to be at the game hours before. Maybe some of it is down to the climate. It was an absolutely gorgeous day. It was the best part of 30 degrees. But it's so nice to see that is the highlight of people's day. That is the culmination of the Saturday, if you will. And they're going to make it into a whole day. And I think the club do really well to lay on things as well outside the ground. You know, you've got big screens with BTV showing the Premier League because they have the Premier League rights. There are events going on. There's music, etc. And I think that really helps to settle everyone down and already get people in the mood. So by the time they get into the ground, they're ready to really support the team. And what I found interesting was I expected an intimidating atmosphere against Porto, and that's exactly what came. The noise was deafening every time the Porto players came out to warm up. In the first 20 minutes, every time one of their players got the ball almost, there's just whistles and boos and an absolute wall of noise. But what I found interesting as well, it was against Penafiel. The fans were using the bits of cardboard for the pre-match choreography and throwing it at the players. And I know it's not particularly sporting, but you could see how up for it the fans were. You know, the fact they're playing the bottom of the league, they're already 1-0 up inside 10 minutes, and yet they still want to give their team every possible advantage. So the player comes across to take the throw. You know, we saw it with the left back at the end, Vitor Bruno. I think there was 3 minutes left.
Yeah.
And they're throwing things in. All right, someone went overboard and threw a coin, but you know, throwing bits of cardboard, and he just threw his toys out the pram. You know, he eventually gave the ball to his teammates. Said, "I'm not taking the throw." You know, they're 4-0 down at that stage, and I think that is huge. That is a big part of Benfica's success at home. You know, it's no coincidence they've gone 50 home league games unbeaten now. You know, that was the 50th game in the league without losing. A run that stretches back to March 2012. It's incredible, and so much of that is down to the fans. You know, we had 57,500 in there on Saturday, so not quite a sellout, but the noise was fantastic. And you know, and you don't get that every other football ground, especially when you're top of the league. You expect to win at home. There are some grounds where the fans are spoiled and they become a bit blasé, and they're used to winning. So a win is just par for the course. It's what they expect, and consequently, they don't get off their seats. They don't sing and raise their voice and shout. Whereas it was almost, what I like about Benfica is it's almost as if everyone inside the stadium is going to the football for the first time. You know, and they're still, and it really captures their imagination. Yeah.
Jose Mourinho complains about the atmosphere at Stamford Bridge week in, week out because his fans.
He's been very outspoken into that. I don't know if that's just his way of just trying to G up the fans a little bit more. But I think if he keeps pushing that, he might get himself into trouble. As long as he keeps winning, he'll be fine with that.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's the best tactic to go to the media and publicly slate the supporters. Yeah.
Patrick, you've been around Benfica for a little while now. You've seen every player. I mean, mostly every player. Benfica's been at full strength over the past couple of months. Any position in particular you think Benfica needs to reinforce here in the off season? Is there anywhere you think that they should upgrade? In your thoughts?
Right, I'm a bit worried about right back, to be honest. I think I'm not sure Max is going to sign, and I think that would be a huge loss. Yeah. I personally think they should pay him whatever he wants. He's 30, but at this level, I think he could play for another 5 years. He's been there, I think, 8 years. He, along with Luizão and Gaetan and Jonas this season, but in terms of the continuity of the project with JJ, Maxi is on a par with Luizão. So I think if they can get him to sign, then that is a big part of their recruitment done for next season already. I don't know. You guys will be able to tell me a lot more about this. I don't know how the B team is used, but I think it would be a mistake to have too many senior pros on good money who aren't ever going to play for the first team, who are just in the B team. Do you just want to win games in the B team? I mean, the B team can't go anywhere, can't get promoted. It's good to. I think they'd be much better off having a squad season and leaving.
Yeah, I mean, to add to what Patrick's saying, I mean, that's been a pet peeve of mine and Steve's and even you. I mean, we've all mentioned here sometime. Benfica, at some point, had 114 players on the contract. So it's like you're saying, why are you paying these players this ridiculous amount of money to have them on the B team? And so it kind of goes back to the 114 players. I've said all along. Terminate most of those contracts and save that money that you're paying these, whether it's 30,000, 40,000, it adds up when you multiply it times 20, 30 players, and now you could afford to pay a Moxie to keep him around, because this guy's a tremendous player and a tremendous leader. I mean, the guy puts his heart and soul out there every single week. The other player that I don't think anybody's talking about, because we're just so ecstatic at his performances, and Patrick's mentioned the guy's been the consummate pro, his level never dropped, and that's Jonas. Benfica only signed him to 1 year deal. So that's another player that Benfica's going to have to negotiate here and re-sign and hopefully bring this guy back for next season. And he's 33 or whatever it is, but the guy's still a spectacular player. Yeah,
he's 32, and I think he's got a contract till next summer. So he's got 1 year left. I think they signed him to 2016. So I think he's okay with that.
That's Julius Caesar is probably.
Julius Caesar signed the 2 year. He signed. I know for a fact.
Sure?
He's at 2016.
Yeah. He signed the 2 year deal, and now he just renewed his contract. Supposedly a couple weeks ago, he renewed his contract. Now,
there was talk in the paper. I don't know if it's official. But I think there's talk of him going to 2018, which is bold. I think he's 35.
The oldest player on the field this weekend.
He's had a good season, but 2018, that's another 3 years. Whether he's still going to be performing like this at 38, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, Steve and I have often talked about this, about the length of contracts that Benfica gives youngsters, really, which sometimes we think that they're a little bit too lengthy. And when a youngster signs a contract for 4 or 5 years, what is the motivation that a youngster has to really play to get better? Because that money is always going to be there.
Nah, I don't have a problem with that, man, because if you're a professional, right, you want to try to get to the highest level possible. And obviously, after signing with Benfica, what's the next highest level? It's try to represent your national team from whatever country it is that you come. So hopefully you have that self-motivation. And if you don't, bro, whether it's a 2 year, 3 year deal, you're just not going to make it.
Yeah, but I also think that signing these youngsters to a very long-term contract will tend to have them be a little bit lax, perhaps in the first couple years of their contract, when they should really be playing to impress for the club. I understand what you're saying.
A team like Benfica can't offer a youngster a 3 year deal, a guy that maybe in his third year will only be developing to the level that they expect him to leave, and then therefore the big sharks come and get him. You have to give him a little bit longer of a deal because you're Benfica. You can't challenge. You can't sit there and compete with the big sharks of Europe. So you're stuck. You have to give him these big deals.
But that's one of the reasons too why at one point you had 114 players on the contract, because a lot of these guys are on long contracts.
I disagree with that, overlap. But see, I disagree with that though, because a lot of these times Benfica, just like now, every time you turn on the computer, You go on to any of the Portuguese newspapers, they're linked to 15 players a day. And I understand if you're an agent, you want to link your player to Benfica because his value goes up and the competing clubs will have to pay. And then you as a newspaper, by putting Benfica on the cover, you're going to sell more paper. So I understand the whole business aspect of it. But the fact of the matter is that Benfica still goes out and buys players that we will never see play on the A team. Don't even work, don't even go to training camp with the club in the off season. Just like they just buy them and automatically loan them out with no intention of ever playing these guys unless they develop into Lionel Messi. That's the way they look at some of these guys. And that's, to me, that's the transfer policy that they have that I do not understand. Now, if you're going over there and you're signing a kid for 6 years and he busts out after 3 years, you know what? As long as I got the first 3 years out of him, you kind of understand the situation that Benfica were in at the beginning. I'll take it. But are you giving 6-year deals to guys I never heard of? Guys that are coming from Argentina, Israel, whatever, bro. Whatever the case may be. That makes absolutely no sense. Now, you look at cases like the kid that went to Valencia, Gomes. Right? Gomes, that's his name, right? André Gomes. You telling me you wouldn't have liked Benfica to give this kid a 6-year deal? Yeah. I mean, come on. It works out in your favor if you hit on the player. If you miss, then you're stuck.
Yeah, but most of the time for a team like Benfica, who doesn't have the cash to splurge, and 3-4 players lost investment is no big deal, like a club like Real Madrid, Benfica has to make a lot of lottery buys because they just don't have the amount of cash that Real Madrid pays for a good player coming out of Brazil. And so Benfica has to take a lot of these lottery buys and hope that in 10 you get one David Luiz. You know, in 5 you get an André Gomes, because André Gomes he came from Porto. He was brought up in Porto, and then Porto let him go, and Benfica picked him up.
Yeah, listen, that happens a lot with Portuguese players. Same thing with Manuel Fernandes. We got him from Sporting. Manuel Veloso went to Sporting. Yeah, but, you know, these kids, it gets to a certain level, they might not think you're there, and they let you go, and then the smarter clubs go and pick them up. But to me, just the whole transfer policy at Benfica, I understand what they're trying to do. Like you mentioned, they get one David Luiz. That's fine, but I just think they invest way too much money on guys that I don't think even they have hopes that they will ever play on the first team. I call this term cock blocking a lot of times. I think Benfica just goes out and signs players just because they don't want them to go to Sporting or Porto.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I was watching the game earlier on tonight, Bayern Munich game. We're talking about that just with Dortmund. You know, buying players from Dortmund just to weaken their opposition almost. You know. Did they really need to sign Mario Götze? He's barely played, and I think, and there's a danger of that. And I don't think it's honest. I don't think it's fair to the player. But coming back to what you were saying about what do I think Benfica need, I think the one minor criticism I think I would level against JJ is that he's not been able to incorporate other strikers in that system. Lima and Jonas are both performing fantastically well. The strike force are brilliant. But are you not telling me that when you're leading 3-0 with half an hour to go, you can't throw on one of the younger guys? You know, these guys should be playing 15, 20 minutes every game. You know, Benfica often win by several goals. Bring the young guys in. Get Jonathan Rodriguez or someone like that. Get them involved in the first team setup and have them as your go-to guy. Let them play in the cups. You know, there's enough games there for one of the fringe members of the squad to really feel a part of it. I know that Lima and Jonas are your guarantees, and maybe at this situation, when you're going for the title and you know that you have to win every game to get that done, do so. But if you're 3-0 up against Penafiel on the hour, then get someone else on. Rest those guys for the following week.
Agree with you 1,000%. And we saw what happened this week, Patrick, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but we saw what happened this weekend. When Benfica's up 4-0, and Samaris and Maxi Pereira both got yellows, okay, and they'll both miss next week's game against Guimaraes. Maxi got a yellow.
Not Maxi,
he's missing
not
also.
Maxi. No, just Samaris, yeah.
Just Samaris.
There was some misrepresentation of that.
Okay.
Yeah, it was going around social media. I had a couple of guys tweet me, and I checked that, and it was just Samaris. Yeah. There were 4 players who were one game away from a ban. I think the other ones was Jonas and Julio Cesar, and
Jonas has been holding up for the longest time.
The reason why I mentioned because
the
reason why I missed because the guys on Benfica TV during the play-by-play, they said both of those guys are missing the game this weekend. So that's why
it wasn't Patrick, was it?
No, it was Portugal.
It wasn't me.
No, so yeah, so you make a great point. I mean, obviously he could give the Jonathan Rodriguez some playing time, but let's be fair, Patrick. Okay, let's talk man to man, you and I right now. You telling me that LA deserves playing time, bro? Come on, the guy's a bum. Guys, it's not like JJ has other options. Jonathan Rodriguez, I'm with you. I think this kid, he's showing a lot of promise on the B team at least. Okay, on the B team. But he's talking about strikers right now. And Cristante is one of the questions I have for Patrick a little bit later on. Thanks for spoiling him up. No, I'm joking. But no, so Patrick was referring to striking. It's not like Benfica has, a bunch of kids. Maybe Guedes and Jonathan Rodriguez. Yeah, absolutely. Those two kids should absolutely be playing. And JJ does a terrible job. JJ's like another Mourinho, guys. Think about it. Mourinho
I was thinking exactly the same. The skeleton squad. He relies on those players, which is great, and there's a lot of value to that because it is looking very much like Benfica are going to win back-to-back titles. The only thing I would say was also it's going to be hard because he's got two senior players who are both technically in the race for the Golden Boot. I think it's gone now with Jackson's 2 goals against Gil Vicente. He's too clear, two games to go. I think it's too much. But they're playing against Penafiel. Lima has 2. He's on a hat trick. Jonas has now got Lima only 1 behind him. He wants to get ahead of Jackson the following. So it is hard to take them off in that situation as well. I get that, but I think that perhaps earlier in the season he could have brought these guys through a bit more, and they could have already been a part of this. Yeah. Man,
it's rough for a coach like JJ because at Benfica every game is do or die, guys. In every competition, Pat, you bring up great points, man. I agree with you 1,000%. They could have played in the Taça, they could have played in the Taça de Cerveja, whatever. But that being said, dude, this is Benfica, bro. All right, every game, every title matters. Yeah. It's not like Benfica doesn't have, the luxury of going into a Taça de Cerveja game and say, you know what, we're going to play with our putos just like Sporting does. Okay, Benfica fans, they'll be cool with it if you win the game. The minute you lose the game, they'll bring out the axe and ready to chop it, okay? Sporting, Sporting's been on that we're going to play the puto shit since 2001.
No. But you're missing Sporting is doing it as a protest to this league, to this competition, actually. That's why they're doing it.
Well, I'm talking about it. Well, but Sporting does it in all competitions. They play the putos. That's what I'm talking about. I just brought up the Taça de Cerveja just to bring, because that's the least important of the titles that Benfica challenges for. So that's why I brought up the Taça de Cerveja. It had nothing to do with what Sporting is boycotting. I'm just saying that Sporting year in, year out tells you they're going to play a bunch of kids because this is the year they're going to develop. And they never do, and everybody's just so ecstatic at the fact that they got 4th place. Where at Benfica, if they lose a game in the Taça de Liga, they want to kill them. And that's why I don't think Benfica has that luxury going in there and playing 6 kids from the B team. So, Patrick, you're 100% correct, my friend, and I'm with you. But at the same time, you have to look at the club, at the way that the expectations that are out on this club. I don't think the people, they say tonight the good things, but I don't think that they'll afford you the possibility to do that.
Yeah, and you guys know the club a lot better than I do. I'm still finding my feet with the club. I'm still looking at it very objectively from the outside. But I see what you mean. Like on paper, he should be doing X, Y, and Z. But as you've just explained, Chris, there are a lot of factors that make it difficult for him to do so. So I think it's still a case of me trying to get my head around just the size of this club and what it means to people. I see it with the media coverage every day. It's absolutely huge. So I think, well, I mean, I was looking at it. It's going to be, if they beat Maritimo, it would be sixth title in 7 years in that competition, which is crazy, really.
Yeah, that's been Benfica's competition since its inception. But Patrick, let me ask you this: have you been to the Seychelles?
No, I haven't, and I want to go. Actually, I was I asked my boss if I could attend press conferences. So the plan is that I'd like to go over there. I think I might wait until the start of next season now, but I'm going to get over there for some Champions League press conferences pre-match. And have a look. But I'm keen to have a look around. Yeah.
And even maybe catch some B team games so you could get familiar with some of these guys.
Yeah, no, that would be nice actually, because I see the results. But it would be good to go and watch. I'm not aware of how that works, to be honest, when they play. So I don't know if it's the weekend as well. Well, presumably the games don't clash with the 18. So I would be keen to have a look at that as well. Absolutely.
Yeah. And Patrick, what's the atmosphere around the back, the halls and Stadio de Luz with Benfica's staff? Is there a certain level of contained excitement on some of the staff, or do you think they feel that they got this in the bag? What's your feeling of what goes on behind the scenes?
Yeah, I think there is. I think it's all building up quite nicely. The club have had something to celebrate over the last few weeks. You know, with the futsal team doing well, and then the volleyball final, all this. So I think there's a lot of excitement around the club, and I think they realise that this is a huge season. To win back-to-back titles for the first time in 31 years, that's almost there's a changing of the guard almost. You know, ever since, I mean, I've just been looking at this and, you know, doing my research. Obviously, I wasn't here to experience it, but all the stats show that there was this huge shift in power when Pinto da Costa took over at Porto, and I think Benfica have had a bit of an inferiority complex since then in terms of how many league titles Porto won. I know there was a stat in Abola a few weeks ago before the Clásico which compared how many titles they'd each won pre-74, pre the revolution, and post-revolution. So I think the fact that they are so close to winning back-to-back titles, I think there is a real notion that they could go on and this could be a winning dynasty. Keep the coach there, keep the team in place. There's been a lot of continuity there, and Porto chopping and changing manager as well. You know, it looks like Lopetegui is still going to be there next season, albeit under a lot of pressure. And so I think there is excitement around there. I mean, a lot of the staff, if not all of the staff, you can tell they're Benfiquistas. And I don't know if that's a requirement. I don't know if that's part of the interviewing process when they get the job. But there is a lot of excitement there, and you can tell that people are they're trying to contain their excitement, because it is every time it's just ticking off another win and waiting for it to come. Personally, I think it would be a shame if the title were won this season. I know the fans obviously want the title to be won as soon as possible, but I think it's a lot sweeter to win it at home on the final day of the season. But the other side of that is you could say that you've got the title won, you can relax, let everyone have their game on the final day and really enjoy the party. But no, there is an excitement around the place, and there's a buzz to going into work there.
Right.
And I think since BTV have been on the air, Benfica have never lost a game. So we cover the home matches in the league, and so obviously that run. In English, I should stress, because the channel's been there, I think, 7 or 8 years. But since they started broadcasting games in English, they've never broadcast on a Benfica defeat. So I mean, that's obviously, it's nice to go to work and know that the team you're covering is going to win as well. So maybe I shouldn't mention that because I know how superstitious people get. But let's pretend I didn't say that anyway.
All right, so Benfica gets the win at against Penafiel, and we roll on. We are now 1 win away from the title, and like I said, we're going to Guimaraes, and we'll preview that next. But first, we're gonna do Nelson's halftime headlines.
And now, the halftime headlines.
Hemos venido a ganar. El Porto siempre sale a ganar. Siempre que no gana, estás, como se dice, jodido.
And we kick off with this week's possible title-clinching game, as it comes with a large void in midfield. Andrés Samaras will be out against Vitória Guimaraes due to yellow card accumulation. Who will get the start? Will it be Feijó? Will it be Ruben Amorim? Is it possible we see both play in JJ's 4-4-2? We'll just have to wait and see. Nas modalidades, Benfica's volleyball team has won the domestic treble. This year they won the Supertaça, the Taça de Portugal, and the domestic championship. They've completed the quest for the domestic title over the weekend, defeating Fonte do Bastard in 3 straight sets. Congratulations to the team for bringing home 3 more titles to the museum. And we finish up asking ourselves, what is Lopetegui talking about? Some teams are great, some teams have great coaches, some have both. And then there's Porto. From a Spanish coach that's new to the league, has yet to win anything, or beat their direct rivals, he sure is one to have too much to say. Lopetegui has stated he's lost all respect for JJ, but that's normal. He's lost just about everything else this year too. And that's all for this week.
Turn down for what?
Nice.
Turn down for what?
And Patrick, what do you make of this whole Lopetegui and JJ, the back and forth between both coaches?
Well, first of all, after the Clásico, we thought they were just going up for a friendly hug. We were watching on the monitor, We couldn't quite see it from our position up in the middle tier, so we were watching on the monitor, and they went up, and there was a smile, and then there's a hug, and then suddenly it all just kicked off, which was quite amusing, really. You have to sort of condemn it on air, but inside I was chuckling to myself. I thought it was all a bit pathetic, but I think Lopetegui he's feeling the pressure. I think he knows he's just about going to stay on because Pinto da Costa seems to really, really rate him. I think the fact he's linked with the AC Milan job is not particularly a positive indication of his work, to be honest, because that club is in absolute turmoil at the moment until they get sold. But I'm not going to talk about Italian football too much. But I think he's absolutely lost the plot, really. I think it comes back to the game. I think it was round 26 when Benfica played first, and they went to Vila do Conde and they lost to Rio Ave, and they were 4 points clear then. Benfica played that night against Porto played that night against Nacional, and they just had to win the game. They drew. Had they won that game, suddenly the gap is 1 point, and you play the Clásico, and if you win that game, that's the title decider. As soon as they didn't win that game against Nacional, then they had to come to Estadio da Luz and win by 2 clear goals, which was going to be a hell of a task. And he got his tactics all wrong in the Clásico. I know you guys have done a pod since that game, but he was too cautious. You can't. You look at the fixture list. Okay, that game came in round 30. There's 4 games after that, of which Benfica are playing 2 at home. They're going to win the 2 at home. Okay, then afterwards, Guimaraes. Okay, they could lose there. But then the other game, we saw what happened in Barcelos, 5-0 against Gil Vicente. So he had to look at it and be a bit smarter and think, I have to win this Clásico and I have to win by 2 goals to have any chance of winning the league. And he didn't do that. So crucial moments there, dropping points against Nacional in round 26 and failing to decrease the gap. And I think all of that has just been a sort of pressure builder. Then JJ's been quite clever. I think it's a lot of it is kidology. He pretends that he doesn't know the guy's name. He knows the guy's name. He's just chipping away, and it's very clever. I'd love to see him come up against. He'd need to be over a course of a season. It needs to be in a title race. But I think Jorge Jesus and Mourinho over a course of the season for opposing teams would be absolute fireworks. They're so good at exploiting that communication side, and I think his press conferences have been absolutely fantastic. And Lopetegui just lost it. All this stuff about this wasn't a title decider. Next week will be. Before Porto played, as if to say, well, they're going to win, and that riled Lopetegui. And then it's a point I made on Twitter the other day. I was reading through his comments the following day on the Monday, and it really reminded me of the time that Rafa Benitez just lost it with Ferguson when they were top and started talking about facts. And he even mentioned the word facts a couple of times, Lopetegui, so it was eerily similar. And you could just tell that JJ had really got to him. I mean, this is a guy who's going to oversee a Porto team that won't win a title, it looks like, for the first time since the late 80s. So that's a huge failure for that club. In Portugal, you've got 4 competitions to choose from. Okay, they're not going to win the Champions League this year. He was pointing to their success in Europe. It's only relative success. They got to the quarterfinals, which is par for the course for Porto. Okay, if you compare it to Benfica, went out in the group stage, then yes, they've done better. But they've failed to beat, as Nelson just said on the point there, they've failed to beat Benfica. The results weren't great against Sporting, as far as I'm aware, and there was a huge opportunity there. And he's not done it. So I think this has just been building and building and building, and he's let JJ get to him too much. As soon as you start talking about your opponents, you lose focus. You naturally lose focus on the job you're doing. That's why, although it's a lot of these platitudes that they trot out, and with my job, I watch a lot of press conferences, and it can be so boring when people are always saying, I don't want to comment on opposition players, I don't want to comment on the opposition, I only want to talk about myself. And the reason people do this is to maintain 100% focus on what they're doing and what they need to do. And I think Lopetegui, as soon as he starts talking about Benfica, as soon as he starts talking about this cloak of invincibility, if you will, I think as soon as he starts mentioning all of that, the whole narrative is shifted to Benfica. It's no longer about Porto. And bearing in mind that he's under pressure, I think it was completely got it wrong. This is someone who's in his first season in Portugal. He doesn't speak the language, and he's basically attacking the media. He's attacking the biggest club in the country, who are champions and who have a lot of support behind them and a lot of sway in the media. And on top of that, then he's not really endearing himself to the local press either. So all of these factors, I think, basically that post-match press conference was his way of giving up the title. He made a few bullish remarks about saying we're going to win our games and we'll see what happens come the end of the season. But I would be very surprised if it doesn't come this weekend, which, by the way, I'm still not sure if we have the confirmed kickoff times. I saw in Abola this morning that it was 6 o'clock on Sunday, but I'm not sure if that's...
Everyone kicks off at 6 p.m.
It is confirmed, okay.
Every single team.
I went on Benfica's website and it still said 23:59 on Saturday, so... but there you go. Anyway, okay, 6 o'clock. So, which is rare, by the way. That's only the third time this season that they'll play at the same time. And that's another point I wanted to get onto, if I may. It's just the fact that Porto haven't played before Benfica since week 24. I think a lot of that is down to their Champions League commitments, so wanting to get them as much of a rest as possible. So if they played on the Wednesday before, then they're likely to play on the Sunday, and so Benfica would play on the Saturday. But I think that's significant because, and I think that's one thing that Lopetegui could have legitimately complained about, and he didn't. He's not mentioned the kickoff times once. Benfica have played, I had a look at the numbers earlier. Benfica have played first in 6 of the last 8 weeks. Round 29 they played at the same time, and then round 30 was the Clásico. But apart from that, Benfica have played first every time, and that's significant because they've had this lead. It was 4 points before. Since the defeat at Rio Ave, it's been 3. But had Porto played first, they can then cut with a win. They can go level with Benfica. All right, you still got a head-to-head thing, and then suddenly the pressure switches. Whereas every time it's been Benfica moving 6 clear, and Porto can only reduce the gap to 3, which psychologically I think is very significant. But he's not mentioned that once, which I find interesting.
It's funny you mentioned that because at the beginning of the season I was complaining the other way because Benfica lost a couple games. What's the game I'm always talking about? Passo Ferreira. Porto played earlier and they had slipped up, and Benfica knew the result that they needed to get, and I thought that JJ took his foot off the pedal. So you could definitely make that complaint both ways. I think it works both ways. It definitely benefited Porto early in the season, and so and I think the one thing that's key that you mentioned there, Patrick, is the fact that due to the fact that they were playing Champions League games, the league tried to give them a couple more days rest or hours rest or whatever it is. So I think that's why they really had no gripe here in that complaint.
Yeah, I think it wasn't done on purpose because, like you said, Patrick, the Champions League. But it is what it is, and there's always somebody that's going to pick up on that and find some kind of unfairness to it, or what may you, because that's just what people like to pick up on these little things and just create a whole big thing out of nothing, really. So it is
always looking for the story, eh? The journalist always looking for the story. That's what it is.
Yeah, but the biggest story now becomes our visit to Guimaraes. And I'll give you some quick facts on Guimaraes. Guimaraes is currently 5th. Their overall record is 14 wins, 9 ties, and 9 losses. At home, 10 wins, 4 ties, and 2 losses. They have only lost 2 games at home, and those 2 games they lost were to Belenenses and Setúbal. They tied Porto at home, and they beat Sporting also at home. So, Chris, we're anticipating a very, very tough game for Benfica, and I know both Steve and I think that it's going to be very hard for Benfica to come out of Guimarães with the win.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I tell you guys all the time, that place is a very, very tough place for Benfica to get into. Just to get into the stadium, there's I mentioned it before, there's dudes waiting on bridges and throwing bricks through cement blocks and bricks through the buses, windows and stuff like that. So it's always going to be very tough. Guimaraes is a very organized team. They play very attractive football. I still think Benfica is going to be able to go in there and walk away with a very positive result.
As 2 clubs, and Patrick, you might not know this, Benfica and Guimaraes have very, very good, a very, very good relationship between both clubs. As far as the fans go,
Oh man,
not so much. As a matter of fact, there was somebody on, I think it was a former player, Alex, who was a former Guimaraes player. He also spent some time with Benfica. He said, he came out to the intermediate and he said that Benfica fans shouldn't really be over celebrating in Guimaraes because then things might get ugly up there.
Right. Yeah. Which again comes back to my point about it might be almost for the best if the title was secured in the final day at home to Maritimo, but that would be a lot nervier as an occasion if Benfica did go into that game needing to win. But let's be honest, they dropped 4 points at home all season, Sporting and Porto. So I think there's no doubt they're going to win the game against Maritimo. It's just whether the title is already won at Guimaraes. And I was reading in the paper actually that Benfica don't have the best record there either. I think it's 3 wins from the last 10 there and 7 defeats. I don't think there's too many draws. But JJ has a good record when he's gone to Guimaraes. I think he's had a few wins there in all competitions. So you can look at it one of 2 ways. Again, it comes down to keep a clean sheet and see if you can nick a goal. If they get that early goal, then that's it. That's the title, I think, because the momentum surrounding Benfica at the moment is just irresistible.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw it with the 5-0 win last week as well.
Yeah, I actually looked that up. In last 10 meetings up there in Guimarães, Benfica has won 7, lost 2, and tied 1. Last 2 seasons, Benfica has walked out of there with wins. So, I mean, it's significant, but I think, like you said, Patrick, the anxiety perhaps is going to play into it. The fact that the Guimarães also doesn't want to be known as Portuguese called bombos de festa, which translates into the party drums. It's a rough translation. Only it makes sense in Portuguese.
The party poopers.
Well, not the party poopers. They don't want to be used as the elements to the party.
Right. Yeah, I get you. They don't want to be the cannon fodder. Okay, I get you.
Right. Exactly. So that there's going to be. I'm anticipating a very aggressive game. And like you said, Patrick, I think that if Benfica scores early, there's a very good chance that Benfica will walk away with the win. But it's going to be a much harder game than what Benfica has seen in the past couple of weeks. Christian, what do you think, man?
Listen, obviously, it's a much better team than anyone Benfica's played over the last couple of weeks, with the exception of Porto. But that being said, I still think this is a team that's very well coached. JJ has been around the helm for a while. He knows exactly what to do with this team. And even if they don't score early, I still think Benfica knows that they need to get a result here in order to clinch this title. And I don't think they're going to let that slip through their fingers. I think that they're going to do everything they can to walk away with the 3 points and come home and celebrate with their fans on the last game of the season.
And I think Rui Vitória is no slouch either.
No, he's not.
And you may know this, Patrick, but Rui Vitória has very strong ties to Benfica. He was a guy that coached at Benfica for a very long time. He then moved to Fatima, and at Fatima he had like 5 or 6 Benfica juniors and B team players playing for him. So he's had this connection to Benfica, but he's not going to lay down. And trust me, the fans are not going to give an easy time to Benfica either. I think that somebody had said that there's only be made 4,000 tickets available to Benfica fans. I'm sure they have other ways of buying tickets, but it's going to. And I don't know how Guimarães fans feel about this. I think at this point, I don't think Guimaraes is playing for anything. I think that they've already got the 5th place wrapped up and Europe wrapped up. But I don't know how the fans feel, and if there's going to be a huge affluence to the stadium from the fans from Vitória de Guimarães.
I think a lot of the Northerners, man, the Portistas will be out. I'm telling you, they'll be out and try to spoil the party for Benfica, and they'll be rooting Guimarães hard. I think that's the, those are the guys that are going to be there supporting. And aside from that, like you said, they have a very good supporters group, man. That stadium's going to be, even though, like you said, they've already clinched the European spot for next season, and they can't drop any more spots. But that being said, I think the fans will be out there in full force supporting this team, and it's Benfica coming into town. Anytime Benfica comes into any stadium in Portugal, they're going to pack it up, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But, yeah, Benfica, I think they're hitting on all cylinders this year.
Patrick, where are you planning on watching the game?
I think I'm going to go to the stadium again. I'm going to go up to the restaurant on the top, Terceiro Anel. The restaurant up there was quite good. I saw the Rio Ave game up there. and that didn't go well. So I'm hoping it's not bad luck. But I'm planning to go up there and then hot tail it down to Marques if the result goes well. Yeah.
Patrick, has anyone taken the time to fully explain to you what's going to happen at the Marques, or just the pictures kind of speak for themselves that you've?
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to my colleague Tiago Fonseca Marques, who does the commentary with me, and I was asking him. It must have been just after the Braga game, my first game, and I asked him whether there was a specific place that the Benfiquistas went to celebrate the title, and he said Marques Pombal, and then he took it upon himself the next time I was in to ask one of the technicians to restore some archive footage. And I saw last year with the 200,000 people, and he told me he wouldn't be going there because you can't physically move for hours. But I can tell you, I'll be there. I'll be there. I'll be one of the last ones there if and when it happens. In some ways, I think it would be nice to have that after Marítimo. Maybe it will happen anyway after. You guys know better than me. I don't know if Benfica win the title on Sunday, will everyone go down to Marques, and then would they do likewise the following week after the Marítimo game? I'm not sure. But
I think they'll only do it once. I think that if they wrap up the title at Guimaraes, people will start congregating at the Marques right after the game, and the team will make the trip from up north, go to the stadium, change buses, and then make their way to the Marques.
Okay. No, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I don't think they'll push the celebration out 1 week. I think the celebration will be done that night. From my experience, from all the years that I follow Benfica, that's the way that they've always done it. You know. So we'll see. Well, we got a question here from Meg, Lovers Out of Time on Twitter, for Patrick. Patrick, what is the most interesting / fascinating thing you've learned about while working at Benfica?
Wow. Okay. What is the most? I don't know. Actually, that's a tough question. I should have read these beforehand. The most interesting, I think, coming back to the most interesting thing is just the support, as I said, and it's not been something I've been told. It's been something I've been able to witness week by week, going into bars and even with my pidgin Portuguese, chatting to some of the bar owners about football and about Benfica and reading the press. I try and buy the paper every day and occasionally try and buy something other than a bola to try and get a slightly more a different view on things as well. And going into the club, I think what has impressed me is the scale of this club, is the size of it. I knew Benfica was a big club. I knew they'd won 2 European Cups. I knew they'd won over 30 league titles before I came to Portugal. But I had no idea of this wonderful international fan base. And I just want to take this opportunity to say that it's been fantastic. All the comments I've been getting on Twitter and everything. Everyone's been so welcoming. And just the scale of the club, the size of the club, and how its importance, not just in Lisbon, but in Portugal as a sort of cultural institution, if you will. And I had no idea about the modalidades and all this stuff, so getting an insight, I'm in the office and on BTV they're showing roller hockey, which is not a sport that we really have in England, and you just see that, and the pavilion is packed out every time. There's people there watching volleyball, there's people there watching roller hockey, there's people there, I don't know if they still have some, I think someone mentioned fencing, so it's the fact that this is this global institution, this sports club, which really sort of pervades into every facet of Portuguese life and is a big cultural institution. So I think that's been the most interesting insight I've had, is just to see the extent of the club. And I do feel very privileged to be a part of the club and to be there and seeing everything that's going on.
Yeah, Patrick, that's a great answer, bro. But the correct answer would have been you got to meet the boys at Benfica podcast. I mean, that's the correct answer, Patrick.
Absolutely.
Come on.
Well, that goes with Chris. That goes without saying. Come on.
Patrick, here's one for me. Maybe the language has something to do with it, but for you and covering Benfica and coming from a background where perhaps you didn't know too much about the deeper knowledge of the club, what has perhaps been for you the biggest challenge in covering the club for this past month to 2 months?
Yeah, the challenge has been all the things that you take for granted when you've covered a league for a while, or you've at least done one season. I mean, I did a season and a half in Serie A, and the second season is so much easier because you've done all the clubs once. So you're just, the biggest thing for a commentator is recognizing the players. And I think I mentioned this the last time I was on. You have little tricks to buy yourself time, and you never say a name unless you're sure, etc. But once you can take it for granted, with the Benfica players, I know who they are, and I did by the second game I was doing it. Once you can focus your attention on other things, that becomes easier. But I think it's all of the links. If you talk to me about the Premier League, I could tell you that so and so had played. I don't know. Let's say Chelsea. Let's say Man United are playing Southampton. I could tell you that Luke Shaw is a Southampton Academy product, and obviously this is all relatively new. I mean, this is all quite current, but all of that stuff that you take for granted just from following the league, and you take it in almost instinctively by osmosis. I can't tap into that same knowledge here. So I do a lot of research for my games anyway. I'm finding I'm doing even more now because I want to be ready. But other things, when I remember the first week when the camera panned to Luis Felipe Vieira in the crowd, and I wasn't sure who he was. And that's when it's great when the guys sense that and they step in and they say, there's the Benfica president, etc. Yeah. So maybe the viewer doesn't pick up on it. So I think that's been the most challenging thing, and that's going to take time. In the same way, it's going to take time to learn a language, in the same way it takes time to meet people in a new place. In fact, I wanted to ask you guys or whoever if there is a good club history that I could read. I mean, I can read in Portuguese, so that's not too much of a problem. But I want to spend the summer really reading up on the club's history.
Yeah,
I don't know if you can recommend anything on that.
I think Peggy hit up Patrick Kendrick with some recommendations. Peggy is quite the studious person about Benfica's history, and he'd be able to point you in the right direction. He's got quite a few books on Benfica's history, so he'll be able to direct you. But Patrick, I know that the last time that you were here and we asked you about what the future holds for you as far as Benfica goes. Have you gotten any indication from the club that you're going to be on past the end of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I'm here. I think I'll still be here. I mean, my plan is to still be in Lisbon come this time next year. So I've spoken to people at the club and said I'd like to do a full season at least. So I've not really put any time frame on it, which is quite refreshing actually. I'm not looking to move at all. So I'm actually looking forward to starting the season and being a part of the team from week one and really doing the full season. And even then, I mean, it's been hard to just come in mid-season really and come in at a key moment of the season.
Yeah.
Having not watched all of the games. Since I've been here, I've watched all of Benfica's games, but next season, right from the start, I'll be able to go to every home game and commentate and also watch every away game. And that's important actually. You really realise that when you haven't been able to watch the progression of the season, how much you miss and the key moments of the season going on. But I think, and touch wood, if they're happy with me, then I'll be keeping on.
Yeah, so Benfica is keen to keep you on next season if you're available.
Yes.
Wow, that's great news. And I know that a lot of you guys, especially out in Australia, Eurosport Australia, Patrick is on there commentating. I think that Goal TV, which is how I watch it, also has Patrick on. I think the NGSN, is it? NGSN?
NGSN, yeah.
NGSN.
New Generation Sports Network, I think it is. Yeah.
And that has also popped up recently, and Patrick is also featured on there on Benfica home games. On the away games is someone else, I think, is one of Patrick's mates. But it's quite refreshing to see somebody that's barely in Lisbon. What, 4 or 5 months? I think. How long have you been in Lisbon now, Patrick?
2 months. 2 months. Yeah, it was not even. Yeah, 17th of March I came. So.
Yeah, and 2 months in stepping into a role where commentating, it's not easy, especially because you try to avoid as much silence as possible as you're commentating the games. And for you to have done that much research, that you always have something to say, interesting facts or a statistic. It's really great and refreshing to hear, man. And I know that I only speak just for myself, but I've heard a lot of people say the same thing about you. And you know, I advise anyone that if they enjoy Patrick to just get in touch with Benfica and tell him how refreshing listening to Patrick is in English. Not that the other guys are bad, but I think that Patrick really adds a new dimension to Benfica's games in English.
I appreciate that. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, you're welcome. Chris, anything you wanted to add? You're kind of quiet today.
No, I'm good. I'm just listening to you asking Patrick questions, and I'm enjoying his answers. Just having a wonderful time. Just another watcher right now, the Benfica podcast, like everyone else at home right now. Sit back and watch. My drink's over. I can't drink, but
that's right.
Having a good time.
Patrick, what were you drinking, Chris, by the way? I was looking at that. I was eyeing that up.
Martini, man. Some nice, calm, not too hard. Yeah, not too hard.
Patrick, anything else that you wanted to add before we go?
No, I think we've covered everything. I hope that I was able to do some of the tactical stuff that Mr. Chalkboard normally does, and we missed him tonight. But so hopefully some of what I said had some impact on that. But I know Steve does some really good tactical analysis on that. So missed that a bit, but there you go.
Yeah. Cristiano?
No, I agree with him. Chalkboard severely missed, but for those of you at home wondering if he's not on because of his internet, don't worry about it. His internet's fine. He just slipped up and something slipped his mind. He couldn't make it, but his internet's fine. So hit him up on Twitter, and you'll be able to talk to him.
Hit him up on Twitter and give him a hard time that he missed the podcast to go to a 5-year-old's birthday party. There you go. So Patrick,
we could tell who wears the pants in every relationship.
Patrick, throw out your Twitter, man.
Yeah, it's at Patrick Kendrick, I suppose. Yeah, Patrick Kendrick with one K in the middle. So,
yeah, there you go. Let's get Patrick to 1,000 followers. Since he can't get the Benfica podcast to 1,000 followers, let's get Patrick in there, and he deserves our
absolutely
our support, definitely, especially when he does such a great job for our club.
Thank you.
At 10CO10, at Benfica Podcast, at Steve Santos 6 birthday party man, and BenficaPodcast.com. I think that's about it. I think that's all you got. And Nelson, thanks a lot for the great job you do, man, on the halftime headlines and also our Facebook page. Thanks everybody for checking us out. Thank you very much. And next week we'll be back, and we'll really see how we come back next week and see what we have going on. I didn't want to throw this up, but here you go. For a second.
Someone that forgets on the festa, pal. Just saying, I want to get that out on record.
All right. So thank you very much. Next week we'll break down the Guimaraes game. We'll look ahead to Maritim, and we'll see how it goes. Hopefully Benfica will be champions by the time we talk to you again next week. All right. Arrivederci, as Cristiano says.
Arrivederci.
Patrick, good night. Thanks a lot for coming on, man.
Cheers,
always
guys.
A pleasure, man.
Thank you. Cheers.
See you, everybody.